Good day, everybody, and today I'd like to have a good yap about the Hell Is Us demo. Just real quick, as an aside, I thought I'd just use this opportunity to make a new type of video that I've been wanting to make for a little while. Basically, just this one you're seeing now, called a Good Yap, and it's essentially just sort of a less specific discussion type video where I can kind of make it, it's less railroaded into a specific type of video, much like the what's this then and the backlog versus are, because they're focused on a very specific first impressions style thing, specifically about one thing, whereas the Good Yap can be about just whatever I want to talk about in video games. Today, I've decided to use it on the Hell Is Us demo because it just released today and it's a game I've been looking forward to. I hopped straight onto it, had a really good time. It's a very interesting game, or at least from what I've seen in the demo, and I just thought, you know what? I would like to make a video on it, but I don't think a demo for the unreleased game constitutes really for a what's this then, because I'd preferably like to do that on the full released game. So, here we are. A Good Yap about the Hell Is Us demo. And well, it's a pretty interesting game. It's got a lot going for it, at least from what I've played in that demo, certainly. I didn't really know what this game wanted to be from its previews and from the bits and pieces I'd heard about it. I wasn't paying super close attention. But I kind of, I was on the other side of the room, I was listening in on the conversation. And I was certainly interested. But now that I've played the demo, I still don't really know what this game wants to be honest. And I think that's quite interesting. I like it when I play a game and I come away from it firmly confused. Not in a bad way, but confused in the sense that I need more. I need more. Not, it's okay, could maybe use a bit more here and there. No, like, I need more to know what's going on here, and I want it. I want that more. I am much more likely to play this game now that I've played this. It has piqued my interest massively. Because it's got a little bit of Souls in there, it's got a little bit of Resident Evil in there, its setting is incredibly weird and unique. The premise, I don't really know what the premise is quite yet, other than our character is trying to find his parents in a place that is apparently very difficult to get into and get out of. There are multiple warring factions in the middle of all this. They have quasi-religious sort of stuff going on. I don't really know how else to explain it, but it's an interesting mix of just a lot of different stuff. It's a big pot. A lot of ingredients have been chucked in there, and it's all coming off in a really, really cool way. At least from the demo. Like I said, just keep that in mind. This is all just from the demo. And by the way, if you're curious, in the background of this video, you'll be watching my live stream footage from when I played it. And if you're watching this same day, this was earlier today. Just to quickly promote that slightly, twitch.tv/Redeyes_NI. Link will be in the description, just if you're interested in checking out the live streams. Because a lot of the times I will stream the games that I will later do videos on this channel. So if you have any interest in that, there's also the second YouTube channel, which is Redeyes number 2, or Redeyes NO.2. So just do a quick little bit of that. I don't do a lot of like self-promotion stuff, but I just thought I'd chuck that in there, seeing as this is a bit more of a casual discussion video. So another couple of things. The combat seems very, what's the word I am looking for? Very strong, very well put together. It doesn't feel like they were trying to copy some trends and maybe they didn't quite get it. It's a bit Soulsy. It's very stamina based. Swing your sword, takes a chunk of your stamina, dodge out of the way, maybe block. There's also some parries in there. It's also got a very interesting system that reminded me a little bit of Bloodborne, which was whenever you hit an enemy, you get this like white effect around your character. It's like particles. And if you time an R1 press after hitting an enemy a few times, and you can hit an enemy like multiple times, it's all based on how much damage you do in a short amount of time. then you get that health back, like no matter what. It's not like Bloodborne where you have to get hit first and then you can kind of regain it. No, you can go from 1 HP all the way up to full just from hitting an enemy and timing this, which I thought was really interesting because it means the combat is self-sustaining. You don't have to worry about like, because there's like med kits and there's like healing items and stuff. Like if you're on 1 HP after a fight and you didn't, get those timings or you got beat up, you can heal outside of combat so you don't go into the next one, just immediately die. But it makes for a really cool system, and I can't wait to see like what boss fights look like, where you've been put down to 1 HP and you kind of have that like clutch moment where you regain the health bar. Really reminds me of Lies of P in the way they did it, where in that game you could run out of your healing item, but once you're at 0, if you keep hitting the boss and not getting hit yourself, then you can regain 1 and then heal, and then sort of keep going like that. So technically you have infinite if you play well enough. Well, you'd have to play bad enough to lose your heals, but then well enough to keep it. So it makes these really like clutch moments, and I have a feeling this one will have something similar. Now, one interesting thing about this game is that you also have a drone. And this drone, in the demo, it only has one function, and that is to distract enemies. So if you have 2 enemies, you can use the drone to distract one while you fight the other one. Because the enemies can mess you up pretty quickly in groups, very, very quickly. There's none of this, like, one of them waits for the other one to attack in the background type stuff. And also, just as a point, I was playing on the hardest difficulty through the demo, and personally I do feel like that's probably the best way to play it, because the combat didn't seem too difficult. And I imagine on a lower difficulty it might make things feel a little bit more trivial, like might make the combat not feel so intense. And I feel like that's really important for a game, is to have its combat feel meaningful. I have to feel like every fight I go into, well, not every fight, but I have to feel with this type of game, with like certainly a game that is very inspired by Souls, that these fights are dangerous. So you don't want your fights just to feel like you're rolling over them. And I know I keep bringing up the sort of Souls thing, but if you're seeing the gameplay in the background, and if you play the demo yourself, because it's free and you can do that right now, you'll know what I mean. It's Soulsy, but it's not quite Souls. It's doing its own thing as well. The drone is like a big part of that, so I'm interested to see what the drone will add. There's also big like charged attacks with your weapons. There's two weapons as far as I could find in the demo. One's a sword and one's dual axes. If you hold triangle, you do like a big charged up attack, and this uses like a meter for the weapon, which you have to beat up enemies to get back and stuff. So you kind of got a little bit of meter management going on as well for some of your bigger attacks. So that's interesting as well, just like another layer there. The main thing seems to be that you want to be dodging most of the attacks, but also parrying whenever you can, because there's also stance breaking. If you parry at the right time, you will not only completely deflect the attack or completely like negate it in terms of damage, you will also damage the stance of whoever it is that attacked you, and then you can get like basically a big attack on them. You hit like X or A or whatever, and then you do like a big attack, and a lot of the time that just kills them outright. Now, one interesting thing, enemy variety. There were basically 3 enemy types. There was like little humanoid guy, walks around, they smack you about. There was one that was kind of like very lanky and like walks around on all 4s, but the 2 arms are like big blades. Very cool. And the 3rd type was what I believe is this game's main enemy going to be later, or it's more dangerous, like centerpiece enemy, was those 2 enemy types that I just mentioned, but they have this like red effect on them. And this red effect comes out and turns into this like geometric shape. It's like almost impossible to really see what it is because it's like shaping and changing all the time. And it will change into like different weapons and different ways to attack you and stuff. And the cool thing is that they are attached to one of these like more humanoid enemies that I just mentioned. There's like a tether that goes to them. And you cannot kill the humanoid enemy while the like geometric shape enemy is alive. So what you have to do is kill the geometric shape. It goes back inside the humanoid enemy, and then you have to kill the humanoid enemy. But once that's happened, once it's inside them, they become enraged and start like attacking more aggressively. But if you back off, the geometric shape like will almost like come back out again. I don't believe it heals, or at least I never saw that happen. It'll come back out with some health, but I don't believe it'll go back to full. But it means like whenever I came up against 2 of these humanoids that had these red things in them, so effectively like 4 enemies, and 2 are invincible while 2 of them are still alive, it made for a really interesting combat encounter. Really emphasized the use of the parry system, because the parries will then allow you to get into like an animation where you're invincible and take one out. So I really like the enemy design. Haven't seen a ton from it yet, but what I have seen has been really interesting. So I'm excited to see what else they do with their enemy design. The has like a bit of a conversation system. You meet a couple of characters, and you can sort of ask them questions, and then ask them sort of contextual world questions as well. At which point you'll hear like your main character actually talk to them as well, which I was a bit surprised. I didn't expect to hear our character be so like vocal in just basic conversation like that. Like there's a cutscene at the start, and he's vocal in that, he's talking away. So that's not too crazy. But after that, I was a little bit surprised because I just didn't think it was going to be that sort of game. And it is Elias Tefexis is the voice actor, I believe, is how you pronounce the surname of his there. Very, very distinct voice. So as soon as you hear it, it's just him right away. And the conversations are fairly interesting. I kind of like it. They're short and sweet. They are interesting enough that you can add new context to conversations. Like if you know something, if you go find something, you can generally go back to someone and be like, hey, I found this thing, what's that all about, Feels like a cool little system. I quite like it. And you can also trade with seemingly everyone that I have met. I think there's 3 NPCs that I spoke to. 4, but that was a different sort of case. But you can kind of trade with them all. And I don't know if that'll become like a major system, or if it's mostly just I found an item relating to you, here you can have it. Because one interesting thing, just speaking about that, is that there are no quest markers. There is no map. Well, there technically is a map, but that's used for whenever you're like fast traveling or traveling from place to place on like the sort of world map sort of thing. But there's no map when you're just running around, and there's no quest markers. So whenever someone tells you where something is, you better listen. And when someone just talks about something that might be relating to them, you better remember it, because there are notes in your like journal. You have like this like tablet that you can open up, and it has like, here's my main goal that I wish to do, which is finding your parents, or going to the place where your parents, finding out where they are and then finding them. And it'll have like a few prongs. If you've ever played Outer Wilds, it's very similar, where you have like, here's the main thing that I want, and then here's the branching off parts that are like, this is related to this is related to this, blah, 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 etc., etc. But you won't get told like, hey, your mission is over there, or hey, this guy wanted this. So, for example, there was an old man who talked about how his sons had died previously at this house that he is now living in, and that soldiers had came and killed them, essentially. Later on, you can find one of the soldiers that did that killing. Well, you don't find the soldier, sorry. You find a note that they had written, and they had stolen one of the watches from one of his kids, and then you can retrieve the watch. You can then, if you just remember the situation, because the note doesn't say, oh, this belonged to that guy. It says like, oh, these guys who were living out at this farmhouse, blah, blah, blah. And if you put the 2 pieces together, you can be like, oh, this was his watch. I should go give it back to him. And then you can sort of backtrack and go give it to him. And then you will then reap the rewards of whatever happens then. Or maybe you just do a good deed, or we'll see what happens. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. Especially if it felt good not having a mini-map. It felt good not having quest markers, because you feel so much more connected to the world that you're exploring, in my personal opinion. It's one of my favorite things about, and here we go again, it's one of my favorite things about Souls games, is just that connection to the place you're actually exploring is so much stronger, just because there is no, well, in Elden Ring there is a map, but it doesn't really tell you anything about like the like micro location that you're in, it's more of a global map. So I really enjoyed that about it, I have to say. Was a big fan. Some games don't really pull off some games rely too heavily on quest markers and mini maps. You know, modern open world games tend to be a lot like this, so it's very refreshing whenever a game is fully designed around it, because there are some games that let you just like toggle this stuff off, but it's not designed around it, so it's kind of like, you know, am I just shooting myself in the foot here for the sake of wanting a more immersive experience? Like, maybe, I don't know. Whereas a game like this comes out the gate and just goes, we ain't got him. But then, you know, the game's designed around it. And I like that a whole lot better. Now, there's one other thing I quite wanted to talk about, and that was that I don't know how... Now, I've said about the no quest markers and no map and stuff like that. However, the sort of first level, the first area, is not necessarily like massively open or massively complex. It would be more linear, but not like totally linear. You're not going in a straight line. There's definitely some side places to go. There's some little secrets to figure out here and there. There's some puzzles. The way I was saying, it's a little bit Resident Evil-like. There are puzzles that are just, hey, look, I have found these 4 spinning things. I have to figure out what the code is. Like, go find out where you can find what the code is from. You know, come back later type thing. So that was interesting. But I would be interested to see if the map design, or the level design, sorry, later is going to open up a bit and really sort of flex that idea of, hey, you ain't got a map, you ain't got a quest marker, and now you're in a big area, so you really got to pay attention. But so far, that first area was a little bit more narrow, so it didn't mean the lack of quest markers and map were really that big a hindrance, to be honest. As long as you were just vaguely exploring, you were going to find pretty much everything that you would sort of be looking for anyway. But yeah, I think my main takeaway from this is that it's just a really compelling setup. It's a really compelling hook. I think they've done a really good job with this demo. I think it was a really important one to put out, because you can watch the trailers and you can be like, okay, I don't know what this game is, but of course I don't know what this game is. I haven't got my hands on it, so it's very easy to say that. But whenever you've got a demo out there and you come away from it and you're still thinking, I don't know what this game is, then I think that's when the interest really sets in of like, I gotta know. Like, the systems here are good. The characters, I don't think there's not really too much. There's not too much to really go on there, so it's hard to say if that's like compelling for most people. They were kind of in the middle for me. You know, like, I kind of like to see more, but there was nothing too crazy. But certainly the things that this demo has set up, the things that it has alluded to, I really want to know more about. And it seems like the game is very much going to be about that sort of thing as well. So that'll be very interesting, especially the opening cutscene at the start when it's because your character's in like an interrogation and they're trying to figure out how the hell he got in to where he's in. And I really want to know why that place is so difficult to get in and out of, and why there's a war in it, and all this sort of stuff. It's just really, really interesting. But yeah, game also looks good. Performance-wise, it's a modern, good-looking game. Your mileage may vary on performance. I would say that for me, it was a heavy game, and this is on a 4090 and a 7800X 3D with everything on very high. I still had to run their own internal upscaler, which was very interesting. I don't believe I've seen that much before. It had the options for DLSS and XeSS and FSR, like the Intel, AMD, and NVIDIA upscalers. However, normally I find that I'm on an NVIDIA card. Using DLSS usually works out the best for me if I'm going to use any upscaler, but funnily enough, their internal one actually worked the best, because I tried DLSS at first. I just immediately turned it on, because it's kind of a more open area that you're in, lots of foliage, lots of grass, lots of detail, and it's kind of a big area that's loaded a lot of stuff, and I was finding that the performance wasn't that great. But then I switched from DLSS over to their internal one, and I noticed a significant jump in the frame rate and just like how the game like felt and stuff, and I was quite surprised by that. So I'm not sure what's going on with there. I don't know if games are going to be moving toward more of their like, hey, we have our own version of upscaling, so maybe try using that. There's probably other games that have done it, I just haven't seen them. It just feels like a different thing that I haven't seen before, and I'd be curious to see if dev teams putting in their own version of an upscaler is more beneficial than, you know, all these other companies doing it, because that's the way it seemed anyway. Yeah, game looked great. Visually was very nice to look at, so no real complaints there. There were maybe some weird visual stuff, but it's like the game has a lot of weird particle effects, and I couldn't really tell if what I was looking at was some upscaling business or the game being a little bit weird. Because whenever I would move through the forest, my character had like these weird little shimmering effects, like sort of around the legs and stuff like that, and that's usually a sign of like DLSS, but it looked very different. I'd never seen it look like this in a game before, so not 100% sure on what that was. But other than that, it seems like if you don't mind turning down settings, and this is also at 4K, keep in mind, so if you don't mind turning down settings, like I have no doubt you'll be able to get something going here. I don't believe the game had any built-in ray tracing, although I'd have to look into that more. So hopefully those with cards that don't have ray tracing capabilities will still be able to play this one, but I could be wrong, so don't take my word for that one. That would be something I would look into more once the game's like fully out and I do the full what's this then on it and stuff. So yeah, really cool game, really interesting setting, real mix of vibes, sci-fi, weird religious stuff going on. These like weird geometric shape enemies and stuff that just feel so different and weird even in this game. You know, they stand out from all the weirdness in the middle of all this weirdness. Combat was a lot of fun. Enjoyed it. The dealing damage to heal system I think is pretty cool. Conversation system seemed interesting. Excited to see where that goes, if they add on to that or build on that at all. And I really enjoyed the no map and quest markers quite a bit, but I do hope that the maps or the level design kind of opens up a bit so that can be used a bit more and not just sort of something that they can go, well, our levels are kind of straightforward anyway, so let's take those out to make it look like we're doing that. So that would be my worry. But the demo did end on a sort of vista of what looks like the next level, and it did look quite open. They also showed off this big cool, well, if you look in the background, they didn't show it off, but you can see it in the background, this like big cool orb with spikes coming out of it and stuff, and it looked all crazy and weird. And yeah, it was a good final scene to just go like, hey, look, you see that cool shit over there? Yeah, you gotta wait till the game's out, and then just fades to black, you know, thanks for playing the demo sort of thing. So that was fun. That was very cheeky of them. I like that. But yeah, that has been my time with the Hell Is Us demo. I hope you've enjoyed this little discussion on it. Like I said, didn't want to do like a full what's this then. So this series will be more of like a relaxed discussion, or maybe a more serious discussion if I want to discuss something a bit more serious, you know. This series is kind of open-ended, you know. I don't want to pigeonhole it into anything too specific. I just wanted a series where if I want to talk about something that isn't necessarily a what's this then, or a backlog versus, or a hype check where we react to the latest, you know, gaming shows and news and stuff, this is what I wanted. So thank you very much for joining me on this Good Yap, and I shall catch you guys on the next video. See you then.